Hello, welcome to a quick video on what apps you need in Japan. Now, before I start, I'm going to say that you can actually get around Japan without apps. However, it does make your life a lot easier. And another disclaimer is that I'm going to be focusing on foreigner-friendly apps, more on ease of use, the fact that you can just use them straight out of the airport, and a lot of apps in Japan you need a local number, and I'm not going to focus on those ones because just in case you don't have a local number, especially if you're buying data-only plans. So let's get straight into the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So first up is ride-sharing apps. Now in Japan, there are a lot of different apps, especially local ones, but I recommend just using Uber or Didi. Now, overall, all these apps are just glorified taxi callers. They're just calling taxis to your location, which can be useful because hailing a taxi off the road, sometimes you just don't see one. But I will make a disclaimer here that there are definitely some great local apps, but why I say Uber or Didi is because you can use it straight off. Like you have Uber on your phone right now, you go to Japan, you can use it. A lot of these times, a lot of these other apps, you need to verify your number, or you need to verify a local number even. And sometimes, for example, I've made mistakes where I just didn't have roaming on, and I tried to verify my number, I realized I couldn't, and I had to turn roaming on. That will cost a lot of money, especially if you're not from Japan, and all that jazz. So in my opinion, just go simple, just use Uber or Didi. They both work fine, maybe slightly more expensive, but in my opinion, it's completely fine. I've used it and it was all good. Number two, emergency apps. So it's no secret that Japan can be kind of scary at times, especially when we went, it was actually the recent earthquake that happened, and was definitely like an alarm thing, like, okay, shit, we need to kind of figure out like what apps we need just in case in an emergency. So I recommend two apps, Nerve, which is a reference to an anime, if you know what I mean. As always, Klook. Now these two apps are probably enough. You can download a whole suite of them, but I will just focus on these two. They will give you the warnings if you need them. And yeah, thankfully we didn't have to use it, but just in case, have emergency apps in Japan. These things can happen and you just want to be safe than sorry. Number three, food. Now, food is a big reason why people want to go to Japan. And you might be using Google reviews, Google Maps, or whatever, just using Google to find food options. However, I'm going to recommend a second option, which is Tablelog. Forewarning, Tablelog it's in Japanese, so you have to use a desktop app. You can download the app, but if you don't have proficient reading Japanese, you probably just need to use the Google app, which you can use Google Chrome and then Google Translate and then actually translate the pages. Super useful. And the reason why I would say Tablelog is because Japanese people actually use it as their review site versus Google Reviews, which is generally just foreigners, to be honest. Now, the really cool thing is Japanese people are really strict on food reviews. So I'd say on Google Reviews, it's 4.1, 4.2, anything above that is generally pretty decent. Whilst on Tablelog, anything above a 3.5 is what they say decent. So don't be too alarmed if a restaurant gets rated 3.8 on Tablelog. That's actually a really good rating. And if you find anything above 4, you definitely need to go try it. So just use both. I just do a quick check on Tablelog to just confirm that, it's actually a good restaurant, but try both out. Very useful apps to have. Number 4, translators. Now, obviously, a lot of people can't speak Japanese in Japan, and including myself, I'm very basic with my knowledge. So one important thing I've used in Japan is a translator. Now, there are a couple I would recommend, but just to keep it simple, you have two, in my opinion, that you can use. One is DeepL, which is a very strong learning model and has an app with it. However, I would probably just stick with Google Translator. For the most part, we found Google Translator did the job. Like, honestly, you don't need a full translation that's completely accurate. And honestly, the Google Translator, just being able to snip a quick image and translate a menu, or even use the audio function, is super useful, and it's just all in one app, and generally, you don't have to download anything else. So honestly, just stick with Google Translate. I know if you want to nitpick and stuff, go ahead, download your DeepL, but for the most part, just stick with Google Translate, it will do the job. I don't know what number we're on, but things to do as a category. So in my opinion, I wouldn't use multiple apps for this because it's just gonna be confusing. So we just actually stuck with Klook. Now, Klook is actually pretty good. Now, you might go, what? Really? Like all these bad reviews on Klook? But honestly, if you're just being sensible with it, booking ahead of time and stuff like that, Klook is generally no issues. So we booked a lot of things, like for example, our Fuji-Q tickets through Klook, and it was cheaper actually, ironically, I don't know why. And even best yet is that you don't need a local card or local currency card or something. You can just book through whatever your Klook thing is. So we're Australian, so we just booked in Australian dollars for our normal cards, like normal credit cards, and that was completely fine. So yeah, you don't need to worry about currency transfers and stuff like that. We just booked on Klook. Generally, for the most part, pretty good. Customer service was pretty good as well. So in general, I found Klook to be pretty useful, but leave a comment below. Recommend an app that you want to recommend. If you don't think Klook's good, let me know, because I just used Klook and it was perfectly fine, to be honest. Okay, so navigating around Japan, I would highly recommend using two apps. One is, if you're an Android user, just download or use Google Maps. I mean, don't download because you already had Google Maps. And the other part is use Japan Travel. Now, Japan Travel is an app by Navitime, if I can remember correctly, and it is a lot more accurate and there is more precise information on it. However, I just hate downloading extra apps if I don't need to, so I just personally use Google Maps, and it got me from point A to point B pretty well on time and had all the information that I really needed. So in my opinion, pretty good. However, if you're really stickler on these things and you're on Apple, where I personally don't think Apple Maps is that great, just use Japan Travel and yeah, try both out. Okay, so now I'm doing audible mentions. Now, you might be going, oh my god, what about this app, what about that app? I want to name a couple here. Number one is Suica app. Now, this is a super useful app if you have an Apple phone. Basically, you don't need a physical card, you just put it on your phone and then you can just tap with your phone. Super useful. However, the big problem with this is that for Android users, unless you have a Japanese phone or Japanese jailbreak phone, you can't actually use it. So for Android users, not a really good thing, but if you're an Apple user, download the app, pretty useful. But I'm an Android user, so I couldn't use it, so yeah. That's why it's in my honorable mentions. And before I forget, another problem with the Suica app is sometimes US or foreign Visa cards don't actually work. So you might need a couple of cards to try and test to see what works. So just other issues that I'd rather just not put on a recommended, but on an honorable mention side of things. Now, another honorable mention is SmartX. SmartX is your way to buy Shinkansen tickets without needing to go to the station, so pretty convenient. The biggest thing that I've seen, however, is that Visa cards, especially foreign Visa cards, don't work. MasterCards do work, but once again, generally foreign cards have a lot more trouble buying stuff on Japan apps and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind when you try it. If it's not working, that's probably the reason why. So I'm putting this on honorable mention just because there are still issues with that stuff. My third recommendation, honorable mention, is Wise. Now, I didn't want to recommend it as an app because it is a card you have to order. However, I found Wise to be pretty useful, and the biggest useful or usability thing that I found it was that the fact that it's a MasterCard. Visas are notoriously bad in Japan. I don't know why, it's just really hard to use Visa. So having a MasterCard is pretty useful. So, and the fact that you can just exchange currencies at a pretty good rate. Not a sponsor, just wanted to call out Wise because it was pretty useful in Japan for me. And that's it. Those are all my apps I recommend. There are probably 10,000 other apps you could download, but I don't want you to download so many apps because then you're just like on your phone trying to look at apps. Honestly, just buy it, just download the bare essentials and just use whatever you have, which is why I recommend stuff like Google Maps and stuff like that, because honestly, I hate downloading extra apps. But yeah, let me know in the comments on other apps I've missed out, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.